This episode is for you if you could use more permission to follow your heart and soul and do what's right for you, or if you've ever struggled with the fear of making the wrong choice and or tired of struggling with daily anxiousness and overwhelm on any level. It's also a great episode if you want to feel inspired and energized and maybe haven't been sure where to find that energy. It's definitely here in this episode. It's also a great place if you want to just have someone help you give it to you straight on what it takes to feel more connected to your soul and what makes you feel alive. Today's episode is a deep conversation with my dear friend Calli Sol. She's an incredible mentor and coach who has been doing that work for a really long time with great success. Our conversation is real and raw and mostly unedited. It's jam-packed with juicy wisdom and insights. I loved this wholehearted discussion about what holds us back from choosing and doing what's just right for us or not, and how we can bring more contentment into our everyday lives. Small trigger warning, there is a mention of suicide and there are some swears. This episode is part of our Goldilocks and the Three Bears fairy tale series, where we're diving deep into issues of the power of choice and finding what's just right for us. Be sure to stay to the end, where I'll be sharing this week's Inflow and On Fire bright idea, which will help you integrate all this goodness into your everyday life. Calli, thanks so much for being here. I'm pumped to talk to you about this story today.
Thanks for having me here. I freaking love this so much.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I feel like the subjects and the content that the Goldilocks story brings up, at least for me, are like really big ones. And I know there's nobody else in my world that can go deep and in dark, crazy places like you can with me. So I'm pumped to talk about it with you.
Awesome.
With the Goldilocks story, I really, initially I hated this story. We've talked about it. You didn't love it either growing up, right?
Yeah.
It's like not everybody's favorite. I actually haven't met even one person that it was their favorite. It's just like not the best story.
Right.
And so to focus a whole month of episodes on this, to really devote some energy, it was honestly the first book that I wrote.
I was going to say you wrote a book about it.
And I'm illustrating it. Like, to spend all this energy with it, what really shifted in me is I started to see these themes everywhere, where I was seeing like how afraid I was and those around me were of making wrong choices, how freaking scary it was to try to make the just right choice for ourselves, and how we typically aren't very comfortable with experimentation. It's like, nope, you just got to know it right out of the gate and run with it. And so my intention with really investing time and energy into this story and discussing it with you and spending time on it this month is my hope is that it makes the world in our own little way a little safer to make choices, a little safer to hear and feel what's just right for yourself and to move in that direction. And ultimately also hoping that we can become more safe spaces for each other to experiment and try things and figure things out. Calli, I'm also just so excited to have you discussing this with me because you've been on the journey with me. As you know, as I've been deep in this story for the past year and developing it, I've really been inside of it, even like living the story. And so you've had a front row seat and have been coaching me through a lot of aspects of it, and have also added so much wisdom to the journey. So I'm just pumped to talk through some of these themes. I think like some of the things that are so interesting about the Goldilocks story and how it still is kind of alive in me is this fear of letting myself experiment too long or try enough things. It's like there's this automatic timer in myself that's like, enough. Okay, we're now to the point where we're wasting time and resources. Oh, we're now to the point where being a bad mother or a bad wife, right? It's like there's all these safeguards where I'm finding in myself there's very little room and flexibility to actually try things. Like go make a mess of a page in a sketchbook. Like what if I did that for a whole afternoon? Heaven forbid. It's like brings up terror inside of me.
Well, and even like, are the trees worth that? Are the trees that the paper was made of worth that?
Their lives.
Wow, you just scribble?
Yeah. So scary, right? Why don't you just take down the planet with you, Quinn? Freaking selfish of you.
Yes. You should have made something of value with those pages.
Right.
The tree sacrificed itself for you.
Right. And so then I'm seeing that within my own creative practice and like my own ability to bring my dream to life. Then I'm watching it in my kids, where I've got suddenly now kids graduating. I know you're in the same boat over at your house, where it's like, okay, cool. You were a kid for like, oh, time's up. Okay, go be an adult. I hope you know exactly what you're going to do and don't screw up and like make the right choices immediately. Like there's not even time. Like I'm watching the need for my son to start taking on student debt immediately, to start like experiencing the consequences of choices that the consequences could follow him through adulthood for forever. Like the stakes are so high. Then I'm watching my girls in sports in middle school and high school and watching the professionalization of sports and how like by the time you step into a high school, maybe even in junior high, you better have your path decided. You better have your sport picked or your activity picked, and you better be damn good at it, or you're going to sit in the back and watch everybody else who's on the stage. And so I'm just feeling like, when the hell do we actually get to experiment and try stuff to even figure out what is just right? Because in my observation, the only way you can make those kinds of fast choices without like experimentation much is when you're taking someone else's script, right? When you're following the path that has been given to you and you're doing what everybody has told you is just right instead of actually listening to what's just right for you.
My oldest daughter, she has dyslexia bad, and she's hated school from the first time. I mean, she was the most confident little thing, and then went to school and learned she was dumb and incapable and did everything she could to just blend into the wall. I told her she wasn't going to college. She says, "You're not going to college." I'm not like, if you really want to, you can go, but I know you really don't want to. Yeah. And so I'm going to give you the space to not go. What I didn't realize is the full-on anxiety and panic attacks that come when people are asking her, well, what are you doing then?
Oh my gosh.
What are you doing then?
Absolutely.
Like she's like, Mom, I don't know what to say. And like she, like if you watch, even just watching her, she'll literally start to like, I can't, please don't ask me this question. It's like, because she doesn't know what's just being perpetuated. Are you dumb? Are you irresponsible? Do you have no drive in life? Are you just in the basement playing Nintendo games? Like, mind you, she has 2 jobs, and within a very short time, she becomes everybody's favorite employee. But none of that is talked about. It's just like, oh, you're not doing anything. Or I know, like, I have a niece that I believe went on a mission because she didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And another friend going on a mission because they don't know what else to do in this area.
Absolutely. My oldest daughter worked at the airport, and she was telling me, we have a good open relationship. I'm really glad she would tell me this, but she was basically telling me every single passenger asked her always, oh, so what are you going to do? And she would lie every time she said, because she would just try on different answers. So just some people, she's like, oh, I'm going to go into biology. And she was doing this to like test their reactions in some ways, but to also like feel into it for herself, because she has no idea. Cool. And so she's just cool. Like wandering around trying on 1,000 different personalities. I'm like, go for it. You're never going to see these people again. Exactly.
So amazing.
And to see the kind of responses that certain answers got versus others was so fascinating to her and informative of like, oh crap, I can't say that.
Right. Like, or, that one was not well received.
Really well, right?
Yeah.
And playing to the crowd versus playing to what's right for you. It's freaking takes courage, right?
Right. And then, I don't know about you, but did you think this was what you were going to do?
No, like, heavens no.
Right? Like, how many left, right, upside down, inside out turns does life take? And, I actually had, in one of the classes, I think we were in the same mastermind, but they were talking about how the person who's going to be the most successful in life is the one who can shift and flex and move.
Wow, right.
And bend and, what's the word pivot. I'm looking for? Yes, pivot and adapt.
Ooh, yeah.
Adapt. Yeah. So if it's like that little thing on the Bug's Life. If you've convinced yourself that this is the way, and you've put all of your energy into the looks like of this thing, and then that doesn't work out, what do you do then? Does this person have any concept of how to adapt, or how to move, or how to feel their way through anything?
Gosh, it just reminds me of when I was in high school, and I'm living by the frickin' book I was given of what I need to do to be happy, what I need to do to be taken care of and safe from God and the world and all the things, right? To the point where if that was a class, I was getting an A++, right?
Right.
And on the surface, it looks like I am just the perfect daughter and the perfect person. And on the inside, I am like struggling so immensely with my mental health that my world is caving in. Like I start having physical symptoms of the unrest that's happening inside of me, and I can't even place it or understand it. Then come to get like diagnosed years later with like major anxiety, depression, and have to go to all sorts of therapists and take all sorts of medication. And in reality, looking back, I see it's so much what you were talking about of like the looks like success and the looks like happiness were not working for me. They did not feel like success and like happiness. And so instead of questioning the rule book I'd been handed, I just turned the dagger in on myself and said, well, I must be broken. I must not be able to feel good. I must not be able to feel happy. And I must be a bottomless pit of need because nothing is making me happy or feel good.
Right. Yeah. So you are. You're broken. You're bottomless.
End of the episode.
Yes. But that was I had to figure that out. That bottomless pit, I had the same experience because it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Nothing was ever enough, and I couldn't figure out why. Why? And what I realized was missing for me was connection. That's where I really started to lean into this whole concept of what something looks like versus what something feels like. And then found Abraham Hicks, and their big stick that they talk about over and over and over again is, yes, the law of attraction, but also what are we looking for? We all just want to feel good. And what does that mean? What does it mean to feel good? And I think that the feel good that I think the body is pointing us to the feel good that is really contentment and peace and a state of rest and digest, rather than the high of Disneyland or the high, like the dopamine experience versus the serotonin experience, where there's just this feeling of like, everything's good. I'm good. I don't need to be anywhere other than right here.
Yes. I love where you're bringing it to, like, just even pointing out it's a biological response has been game changing. Like, you've been so instrumental in helping me recognize the difference, because it can feel so selfish, or you've got so much resistance against trying to feel good that like it's terrifying. And so I think like when in my left brain, right, where I'm like, okay, so I want to feel good, so I'm going to do art today, and I'm going to ignore my entire family because that's what it looks like to take care of myself and put myself first, right? And then I'm doing that, and that doesn't necessarily feel good, or maybe I get a high for a minute, but then it feels like a crash after. Like there's just
punishment.
Yeah. Versus like, I want to live in alignment today, and I want to flow with life today. And that looks like I find myself painting like I wanted to paint, and it feels good. And then one of my kids walks in the door and they've got something going on, and it feels amazing to just like open my heart to them and listen to them and be there for them. I don't have to tell myself, okay, be a good mom now. Okay, now take good care of yourself. It's just flowing from a state. When you're in rest and digest, it just feels like naturally who you are versus something you have to choose or have to like make sure you do.
Someone shared with me something that they read in a book by a neuroscientist. I can't remember what his name is, but they talked about how the left brain doesn't realize the right brain exists. And the left brain is basically just the computer, just programmed with all of the rights and wrongs that we've been taught since we were little. And they said the right brain is very aware that the left brain exists, and it is very aware it's full of crap. So I'm like, but that's pretty freaking cool. And what I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I do not know, but what I have discovered to be true for me is that when my body is in a state of fight flight, the only place it's getting its information from is the left brain. And when I am in a state of rest and digest, the information is coming from my right brain. And I like to think of the right brain as being connected to everything. Creativity. So the right brain, I feel like that state of alignment or that state of flow is from being where you feel safe. So that's the feeling that accompanies the rest and digest. I feel safe and I feel content and I feel taken care of because I feel safe. And so I feel open. And so what is next for me to do just naturally arises. Yeah. And when I'm in a state of fight flight and only being able to pull from my left brain, I mean, it's basically almost like being artificial intelligence, where you're just like, there's no feeling, there's no connection to the life you're living, because you're just trying to figure out what the right thing is to do so that you can then experience connection. Because you did it right, and you're going to be rewarded with feeling good. You're going to be rewarded with a job that you want. You're going to be rewarded. Whereas in that state of rest and digest, and I assume more connection to that right brain, you're good. You don't need anything. You're good. And then I feel like just the whole way you perceive life is so different. What's your experience with that?
Well, it reminds me of, when you've reminded me of this in the past, you've said like, hey, the only reason you think you want that is because you think it's going to feel better than where you're at now.
Right. We've been so conditioned to think that.
Yeah. Like, so when I'm stressing about more money or my weight or, whatever it might be, it's because, and I'm like urgent to get it now. It is always that feeling. Always.
Right.
So yeah, I think before I really understood this concept, every day felt like a checklist in a way. Mm-hmm. So even like with the aspect of just choosing what's right or wrong, like it's like, okay, did I make enough good choices to outweigh any of the crappy choices I made? And like, where are we at on a scale? Even to the point of like feeling this pressure of I need to be grateful. So like, okay, I guess I better have a gratitude journal and I better have a gratitude practice. And I also need to be strong and courageous. So how am I going to integrate those? It like gets so freaking overwhelming so fast for me, because when I am in my left brain, when I'm not necessarily in a connected space, and when I am like trying to be something, trying to become something, trying to get something, in all those kinds of spaces, then it's very much like I have to try to be more grateful. I have to try to be more loving, try to be more compassionate, try to be more patient.
When total looks like.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you're so
like
right.
This. So yeah, so in the brain, it's like, oh, because I did the gratitude journal, I am grateful.
So right. Yes.
Because I did what I was supposed to do, I am happy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like, are you happy? I'm so happy. Interesting.
Right.
Yes.
On the contrast, like when I'm in a rest and digest state and I'm connected to my heart and soul in that space, gratitude is just who I naturally am. Loving is just who I naturally am. I've told you, because we've Marcoed on the back and forth of my weekly Costco trip. Yeah. And I've told you how sometimes I will go in a really connected space, and it's like Costco is sacred ground. There's a part of me that wants to just like fall on the floor in gratitude that who put all this food here so that I could go get this for my family. Like how many thousands of hands took part so that I could just choose these 100 things and put them in my cart. Like how many hands, how many animals, how many lives like were impacted. And then I just see each person in the aisle and my heart is just open to all of them. And I just see like, no matter who they are or what they're doing or how they're acting, I just feel nothing but pure unadulterated love for them. Like, they are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on this planet. It's like, that's what I'm after in my spiritual practice. That's why I think this conversation matters so much, because when I am constantly after the choosing the right thing or the trying to get what looks like success or happiness, it knocks me out of that space. And I am, thankfully, because a lot of your coaching, I'm feeling like so much more confident now in being able to live more and more in this space of this rest and digest autonomic nervous system response, where my heart can be open to all of life and everything that happens into it. And I can wake up more excited to be in flow in my life and on fire in my life, you know?
Oh, as you were talking, I was just thinking of ancestors, and we have cell DNA memories. How many moments in our ancestors' experiences would they have literally thought Costco was heaven?
Oh, all the time.
Like a legitimate, like, this is some freaking crazy kind of miracle.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's almost like you being in a connected space got to feel and experience what they dreamed of. Right. And it's like, and how crazy is it that they dreamed of this thing and they believed so fully that it would transform their life. We have it all day. And why aren't we good? Why aren't we good? Why aren't we fine? And I think it's because we have been so conditioned to believe. And I mean, this is written in all of the books on the gurus, right? You need to find it inside. It's not out there. But it's like, okay, but how? Like, what do you mean by that? I'd love to find it inside, but how do I find it inside? And I think the thing that stills that feeling is fear, is the lies, is the you're doing it wrong. And you're supposed to have it figured out. And this is what it's supposed to look like. And if it's not looking like this for you, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like one of the things I talk about a lot for myself, or in my coaching, is just like, I was downloaded with a specific operating system from my life. And the external output of that operating system was fear. Because the only way that I could be safe, the only way I could ever look like I was taken care of, was if my life looked perfect. Yeah. So I could have a life that looked perfect 80% of the time, but have one thing go wrong or two things go wrong. And then my operating system would compute that as you're not taken care of. Because it's like, because when we're living from that place of fear, we are like, the thing we're listening to is the left brain. We're listening to the computer. We're listening to everything that it's been programmed with that is right and wrong. Like electricity wasn't created from the left brain. The crazy freaking Wi-Fi or whatever the heck that, like all of the magical, amazing things come from that state of rest and digest and connection. Like I think Thomas Edison talked about how he would fall asleep. Because it was in this space between sleep and wakefulness that he would get how to do what was next to do. So it's like, yes, why, like being in that place of connection and feeling safe feels so good. Why don't we stay there? And what I've realized keeps us from staying there, for me, was just believing a story about who I am and what I'm doing here that maybe isn't true. I don't know which one's true. I don't know if this new operating system that I have basically downloaded myself with is the true one, or if the old one is the true one. But all I know is that when I used to operate from the old operating system, I was in a constant state of fight flight.
Let's kind of define that too. So old operating systems, I think most of the Western world still hangs out in a lot, is that life is a test. There's not enough for everybody. So you kind of got a survival of the fittest, right? And especially with the life with the test aspect, is you got to make the right choices so that then you can feel good. If not now, hopefully later.
Right. I think for me, probably one of the biggest core differences between the old way that I saw myself, the old operating system, and the new one, is that in the old operating system, there's power greater than me outside of me.
Yeah.
There is a God that is more powerful than me. There is a universe that is more powerful than me. There are people who have the ability to do things to me. They have power over me.
Right.
And in this new way of thinking and in this new operating system, every single thing is equal in power in nature because every single thing that exists is created from infinite intelligence. And again, I don't know which one is true. I had a shit freak ton of evidence proving the old one, but it's like, what was the evidence that was proving it? It was just what I was perceiving and what I was seeing. But then it's like, if I think about like all the stuff that's out there that we're learning about manifestation or about, your belief system, like you are what you believe. So I believe that what we believe most definitely impacts our emotional state. Whether it impacts the physical that big, I'm not sure, but I know from personal experience how much it impacts how I feel. Who I believe I am and what I'm doing here and where I came from impacts my ability to either exist in a state of safety, in a state of rest and digest, or exist in the state of I could go to hell. And the way our life is happening, pretty sure we're going there.
Yeah, because it's not perfect.
Yes, because if I was going to heaven, like if I had actually been forgiven by the Savior, or if God really did love me and I was on the right path, nothing bad would be happening. That was how my left brain was processing my life. So it's like, honestly, it's just in a constant state of failure.
Or if something bad is happening, you got to prove yourself so that you can get the reward. Like, there's ways that the old way of thinking justifies that too.
Oh,
yes,
the loop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And that's where I just kept seeing, I hit the end of my rope and you hit the end of your rope of like where thinking like that could take you. And I know, like for myself, when I hit the end of that rope where it was like, I am screwed. Like I can't outrun this. I can't make enough of the right choices. Like I can't even muster the strength to choose the right choices that are going to somehow get me out of this because I don't have faith it's actually going to change anything. Like there's just such a darkness and despair that came that it was not like I wasn't going to be able to keep living with that mindset, like there was no reason to. It was so dark. And so I don't know that everybody goes there, right? And like we've seen the extremes of that, and I don't know that that's everybody's experience, probably thankfully. But in some ways, like it's a real gift to be able to get to the end of the rope of like where a belief system is taking you, so you can really see what it is truly and understand it better, to then now be in a space where I'm feeling like, what if on the other side of this, what if this world is just like God's idea of Disneyland? What if this is literally a playground where you get to experience and try and play and do lots of different things, and there's amazing different possibilities? And what if nobody has the power to create in your life and experience and ruin things for you? What if you're going to be able to get the experience that you, on some level, came here to experience? Amen. Changes everything.
Right. And just like reiterating what you were saying earlier, how often do we just think it's us and we don't think it's the operating system?
Yes.
It's just me, because we can see other people succeeding. Oh, this worked for them, so it is possible.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's not happening for me is personal. Clearly, the ability to find what feels good to us is not just necessary. It's like life-threatening or something, almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
What feels right to us, not what is right. Yeah, totally. I feel like the best way to describe this again is just the difference between what something looks like versus what something feels like. And if we think about how Goldilocks was shamed and not anybody's favorite because she was after what felt right to her. And so it's not, you're not going to be like even these kids, right? Like if you don't know what you're going to do, it's because you haven't felt it in your body. Like you haven't had the space and time to be like, oh, there it is. Like I realized that I spend most of my life in a state of not knowing. And that like the way I moved through the world when I was in a state of fight, flight versus rest and digest is completely different. Rest and digest, I was always trying to be out ahead of it. I needed to be out creating.
Not rest and digest.
Yeah, sorry, fight, flight.
Yeah.
I always was out in front of life, like needing to make sure the next moment was going to be all right. And when I am existing in a state of rest and digest and connection, it's almost like you're sitting back in life. And you're just waiting for it to tell you where to go next, because you feel safe and you feel taken care of and you feel trusting. And so I just think that you're a gift to the world in so many ways. And that you having such a strong desire to dive into this Goldilocks story is, I mean, a testament of what you were searching for yourself, right? Like the freedom to feel your way through life. What if we can give that back to each other? So thank you for being amazing.
Well, I think like we can't seem to prove enough that it doesn't work the other way. Right? It's like how many celebrities that make all sorts of money and, have all the looks like, right? The perfect body, the perfect
oh my gosh, they
partner,
arrived. They did it.
The perfect amount of everything to then like commit suicide, overdose on drugs, tear their life apart. Like we have a lot of evidence that doesn't work and it still tricks us. And I love how you and I talk about this a lot, that like it probably will still continue to trick us all throughout, but it's our ability to keep asking the question, to keep exploring and remembering that our feels just right is what matters most. No matter how shiny it looks like. For.
That's what we're looking for.
At the end of the day, that's all that matters, actually. That's all that will actually fill that hole is what feels right. And it's a brave, badass choice, because the world is not necessarily going to line up to celebrate and cheer you on in making that choice every day. And you've got a lot of programming potentially in your mind to go through to feel good about making that choice. But, my hope is in listening to this in discussion and just being a part of this, that it'll open up a little bit more space in yourself to just let yourself experiment a little bit more. Like, what kind of breathing room can you give around who you are, why you're here, and why it matters? What kind of breathing room can you give yourself around like what you want to do in life and even what you want your lifestyle to look like? I think that for so many years I've chased my perfect lifestyle will looks like X, Y, and Z. And until we're there, we just got to keep hustling and got to keep working. And every day is like a means to an end. I've even heard, I forget who said this, but it was just like the golden rule is really simply put is when we treat people as a means to an end, right? Like the opposite of that. The opposite of the golden rule is when you treat people like the means to an end. And truthfully, when I believe that my just right is something that's outside of me, that I've got to go find or chase or create or somehow get, like I treat everyone and everything as a means to an end. Every day that goes by, like this opportunity to be on this planet, to be in this space with people that I love and care about, I treat it like a means to an end to try to get to the thing that I think is going to make me feel better and safer and happier. But when I'm instead being more like Goldilocks and letting myself feel my way through and experiment and try things out, then I feel like it just changes everything. It honestly makes it so exactly where I am right now is just right. And I still have like hopes and dreams and goals, but they're just like for fun. It's like making wishes. It's like playing dress up or like scheduling a super fun play date. Like it's something exciting and fun to look forward to, but I'm okay with or without it.
It's not life or death.
It's not.
Which is that, I mean, that's that fight, flight response. The fight, flight response is to keep us alive.
Good God. So true.
And so, yes, to live not in that state is a completely different life.
To fight for your life every day
Mm-hmm.
versus to actually live in flow with your life every day.
Right. And how could you, I mean, like to hear that, like I was just using people as a means, it's going to make you want to hate yourself and shame yourself and be like, what kind of a crappy human am I? It's like, no, you're a product of your environment.
Totally.
If you're fighting for your life, you're not in a state where you can see other people. What's the point? You're going to be dead. If you stop and take care of that person, you're going to die. Yeah. Or whatever it is. So it's a
will die.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a product of the story. For me, it was just a realization that I was told a story about who I am and what I'm doing here that equaled fight flight all the time. And then I learned you can tell a story about who you are and what you're doing here that allows you to exist in rest and digest.
I really hope everybody listening is getting the distinction with rest and digest not being the dopamine high. I think that's like such a crucial distinction, because my perception of other people who would be like, well, I just chose what was right for me, was like, well, that must be nice for you. Or like feeling like, oh, you're just so selfish. Or like, I think even our popular culture, it's becoming more acceptable socially to kind of say those things or take those stances. But like understanding there's a difference between like selfishness isn't even like a part of the equation as much as it is like, I don't know, floundering with that thought. But
well, I just think, I mean, doing what feels good to you is considered selfish. I mean, that can be a whole conversation of what happens to us as mothers. Mm-hmm. Right? Like doing what felt good to us would look like sleeping in and you guys get yourself off to school or what, I mean, whatever it is, like there's just, I just feel like it's so far out of balance for us as far as, going back to what we feel and what, like where our feelings are versus behavior.
I love that. I was even just listening to, I believe it was in this other neuroscientist book. We're all about the neuroscientists today, but where they were talking about like our natural expression, like that feeds us, is actually service. Like it does light us up. It's like one of my favorite quotes, which is like, I thought life was service. And then I slept and I dreamt that life was joy, and I awoke and I saw that service was joy.
Wow.
Right. And so it's just like this aspect of like trusting your true nature. It all works out that way. Like you're going to take care of the kids. You're going to take care of your health. You're going to be there for people how you want to be, but not because you had a to-do list, but because it's genuinely coming from an authentic space where it is just right in you.
Because you feel good.
You are.
You feel good.
Yes.
So you can, so in that feel good, there you want to share and give and all of those things rather than doing it in hopes that you'll feel good.
Thank you so much, Calli. This has been such a cool discussion. Is there, just in closing, any last little thought you hope people walk away with this?
I again am just so grateful for this conversation because I work with a lot of people with trauma, and I'm trying to drill down into, it's not about what you're supposed to do. I just like, how do you feel? Like I work with people who will remember horrific things like sexual abuse. And one of the things that I've realized keeps them from remembering it is the fear that they're going to have to either tell on the person who did it, or like they don't know how to process what they're going to have to do if it comes out. They're not even thinking about how they feel. Hey, how can I help you feel better? I don't care. I'm not concerned about like getting that person in trouble and doing the right thing. Like, how do you feel? How can we make you feel okay again? And it's like kids when they're throwing tantrums, and it's like, we're so focused on, no, you need to behave in this right way so you're going to be okay. We're not conditioned to be like, whoa, stop all of the freaking bullshit about what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to behave. Are you okay? Like, no, Mom, I'm not. I'm super scared. Well, you have to go to school. Why? I don't know. Because you have to go to school. Like my 14-year-old started getting anxiety out of nowhere. And I was like, man, this is crippling enough that he might not be able to go to school. This version of Calli is like NBD. Like, let's just see what Zach's life path is. Old Calli in fight flight, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to force this kid to go. Like, and following what feels good and getting into a connected space doesn't equal never having anything that challenges a human. Mm-hmm. It's almost like there's this idea that if I just follow what feels good, then I'm just going to be entitled and this person who just lushly eats food. Like, it's the concept that I realized our left brain has with feeling good and just following what feels right to us is you're lazy. You will have nothing to contribute to society. Mm. It's crazy.
It doesn't add up at all.
No.
Because being lazy doesn't feel good forever.
No.
Eating a bunch of crap doesn't feel good forever.
It doesn't feel good. No, that's the dopamine. So It's that difference between a dopamine hit because you can't take it anymore versus a safe, content, serotonin type experience.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Man, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. What a neat conversation, and thank you all for listening too. I always love talking to Calli and feel like I get so much out of these conversations. So I hope you're feeling equally inspired and energized as well, just like I am. Today's Inflow on Fire Bride idea is, what are your top 3 excuses or reasons for not doing what you really want to be doing? Maybe you're just right. Write them down. Are they valid? Is there any wiggle room around any of them that would make it easier to even just bring a little bit more just right into your life? If you'd like to think through this bright idea and more questions to help you break through with this episode's content, be sure to download the free study guide in the show notes. Also, if you're curious about receiving more direct coaching and support from Calli, feel free to email her directly at callibsoul13@gmail.com. And you can also find her contact details in the study guide. In Flow and On Fire is a weekly podcast to help you find your flow and stoke your inner fire so that you can live more joyfully, create those big and beautiful dreams, and make the world a better place. Living in Flow on Fire isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. We make this show every week to help support you in that practice with deep inspirational insights and real-world examples of other soulful people who are leaning into this journey also. To better support your Inflow on Fire practice, we send you each week's episode via email direct to your inbox so you never miss a beat. Go to quincurtis.com/email to sign up and stay inspired. Also, when you sign up, you'll get access to my free Living in Flow and On Fire guide, a step-by-step path to find your flow and stoke your fire today. Sign up at quincurtis.com/email to amp up your inflow and on fire lifestyle with me now. This has been another episode of Inflow and On Fire, a weekly podcast cheering you on to follow your heart and come more alive. It can be tough to stay in flow and keep your creative fires burning bright, so please take this podcast with you on your journey. Subscribe so we can keep fanning your flames and cheering you on each week. If you got something out of this episode and haven't already left us a review, please do. Positive reviews really help other people who need this to find it also. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. I'm here creating this show because I know just how hard it can be to even just stay excited and engaged in our everyday lives. With so many demands for our time and attention, it can be especially tricky to prioritize those nudges from our heart and soul. However, the costs, like depression, disconnection, anxiety, overwhelm, loneliness, lack of fulfillment, and so much more, are really high when we don't. So every week I gather soulful stories, inspiring ideas, and incredible people to help us stay connected to our inner compass and remember what's most important. Ultimately, I created this show because I need those regular reminders too, but my hope is it can also inspire and help you to keep going and bring more of your magic that's inside of you out into the world. We need it. Special thanks to Avesa and Maddie Love for our theme music. Thank you so much for listening, friend. In between now and when we connect again, stay in flow on fire. It matters, and you matter.